Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my page 112 tag video for August 2023. The page 112 tag was brought to BookTube by Sean the Book Maniac. He based it off of a French literary prize wherein they comprised the long list for said prize of novels solely by reading page 112 of the books in contention, which in novel length usually comes in the middle, and the whole point is it's supposed to first of all be past all of the polished for editors pages, kind of the raw real writing, and also the point is to read for the quality of the writing, because you can't judge by the context of the rest of the story. So, I have been using this tag since the beginning of COVID to whittle down my physical unread shelves, while also building them back up again, of course. I have a whole playlist for this TBR game, as I call it, linked down below. I take my three titles out of this handy-dandy Books and Cats mug, which have, you know, the titles written on these pieces of paper. These are titles that I accumulated in or acquired in 2022 or earlier. So what I do is I randomly pick out three possibilities from this mug. I go ahead and I share them on camera with you, page 112, and then I choose one of the books to join my month's TBR. So I have a lot of fun with this. It's like a stab at spontaneity. Otherwise I tend to structure a lot of my reading, often months in advance. So without further ado, let's get into it. Starting with book number 1. Okay, let's see what isn't sticking together. Here's one, and I'll just put that one back in. The Magnificent Esme Wells by Adrienne Sharp. I believe this is a book I've already played with in the past, and I probably got it, I'm pretty sure I got it from one of my jaunts to my used library bookstore. And it is historical fiction taking place around World War II, I believe it is, but it takes place in Las Vegas. Alright, next we have book number 2. I always hope for a little bit of variety, like maybe a book that I haven't played with before could be fun, even if it means more post-production work for me. Let's see if I can go to another part of this mug. Who knows? Let's see what this looks like. Okay, this one is The Forever Summer by Jamie Brenner. I think this is also one I played with, another book I got from the used library bookstore a couple of years ago. I'm pretty sure it is. I will find out later on if it is, and it's one of those books about people getting together and going through their lives over the summer, I guess. I don't know much about it right now, but I guess we'll find out together. And finally, for book number 3, so it would also be nice maybe to find a book I got somewhere else other than my used library bookstore, although that's where I tend to get a lot of these books. But we shall see how we do. Here is a third pick. And this is The Souvenir Museum Stories by Elizabeth McCracken, which, yeah, feels at least a little bit different that it's short stories rather than a novel, although I'm also pretty sure I got this at my used library bookstore. What can you do? Although I've definitely not played with this one before, so at least there's some variety there. Okay, so you've seen me pick out all 3 of these books from my shelves. I'm actually going to go read them to myself first to gather my thoughts, and then I'll be back with you, so stay tuned. Okay, I'm back with my 3 books, and yes, they were all used library bookstore books, and in fact they were all added to the collection in the library in 2021, but then I looked and I saw that I hauled them in 3 different book haul videos, so at least there's that diversity. So anyway, here we go, starting with book number 1, The Magnificent Esme Wells by Adrienne Sharp. Name, age, height, weight, hair color, eye color, complexion, bust measurement, waist, hips, dress size, bathing suit size, hat, shoe, present occupation,
Ambition. Why did you apply for this position? Answer to the last. To try and save my father and myself from further degradation. If my father and I were going to get anywhere in this town, we needed to get away from the flamingo. Because, as my father predicted, he had been punished for being one of Benny's boys, not important enough to be murdered, just demoted to the credit cage. All the hard count workers at the Flamingo had been fired or shoveled into other jobs, under suspicion by association. It was hard for me to see my father, now in the brass cage, no matter how fancy the design of it, pushing stacks of chips across the counter, where he reminded me of his own favorite betting clerk, Carl, from Hollywood Park, rather than the desperately carefree gamblers Carl served, and of which my father had once numbered. Okay, so I guess I think this is okay stuff. It's an interesting, character conundrum coming up about why this woman would want a job. Obviously, it has very important personal stakes for her, and it even references the flamingo, which is important enough to be on the cover of the book. So there we go. And I know enough to understand that this, deals with, gambling and the mob culture and that sort of thing. So, I see the little nods in there to that, which is intriguing on its own. But I feel out of the three of these, this seems to be the weakest to me in terms of writing or personal interest. So I think I'm just going to go put it down now.
Book number 2 is The Forever Summer by Jamie Brenner. Where had everyone gone? Blythe couldn't find Marian or Amelia or anyone for that matter. She passed by Rachel's empty room and looked inside. The photo albums were just sitting there, on the bed. Just sitting there. She never would have sought them out. Every instinct told her to ignore them. Blythe glanced down the hallway in either direction and then went in and closed Rachel's bedroom door. This was madness. She sat on Rachel's bed. The album was a navy blue with gold piping along the edges. The spine was worn. When she opened it, the book crackled. It smelled musty and like old glue. Blythe's pulse raced. There he was, the face that had existed only in her mind for 30 years, achingly beautiful and alive. She gingerly touched his image, Nick on the beach, at the water's edge. She had not known this Nick, carefree, sun-kissed, happy. So this is an interesting one. I feel like you have to probably understand. I guess maybe not, because you're not supposed to have more context than what you read. But this is a very different sort of story. It's a quieter story, I think just a lot less external drama going on in this story. We don't have, some sort of card game between, people who have hierarchical drama between them, like the first book, or we don't have, a man found dirty at the side of a road with a iffy story like the second one. This is very much about a woman who seems to be confronting her demons by way of a man who died, and she isn't sure she wants to see him again. And she's putting a lot of emphasis on how the photo albums are just sitting there. And so it's possible in the past 112 pages, there's, emphasis on, don't show me these photographs, this is too painful, or something like that. It seems like with all that drama, and there was some italics in there as well, that, there was some build up to that. But obviously, this is a loss that she's still mourning after 30 years. And I really do like the end of the page. It's an intriguing thing about not knowing him as like carefree and happy. I mean, that's intriguing in and of itself. But I think in comparison to the other two, it's just not as enticing, even though ironically it's an easier page 112 because it kind of is, the beginning of part of the story rather than in the middle of it. But I think I'm going to go put this one down. And finally, book 3 is The Souvenir Museum, stories by Elizabeth McCracken, the only one I have to read in real time here. So here we go. It kind of starts in a weird way because there's a really long sentence that begins on this page 111, and goes to page 112. We'll have to go with it. And this is about the middle of the story Bird Song from the Radio. This went on for 5 months, until the day after Madeline's 21st birthday, when she woke up in the middle of the day still drunk from the first legal cocktails of her life, start of February, drove to the school, got the children into the car, and found the car was too hot, and as she tried to wrench her wool coat off one shoulder, and as she felt the last of the Black Russian's muscle through her veins, and as she hit a patch of black ice, she understood there would be an accident. She could see the children hurt in the back seat. the windshield gone lacy, herself opening the door and running away, away, away. When the car stops, I'm going to leg it. And that was the last thought Madeline, or any of them, had. And then there's a break. No children, thought Leonora. She had intended to get herself upright and go looking for them. She should have eaten them when she could. For a while she tried to distract herself with the radios. Each wore poor Alan's family name, like a crest on the pellicle of the speaker. She went from room to room and turned them on, but then she thought she could hear, behind the sonorous day-long monologue of the news station, or the awful brightness of Vivaldi on the classical station, or jokes cracked by a disc jockey named after an ancient king, the voices of her children. She tried to tune them in. You had to use the volume and the tuning knob in mincing little oscillations. Then there it was, the tootling rhythm of Dolly's conversation, Rosa humming in the back of her throat as though ready to defiantly swallow the sound should someone walk into the room. Marco sighing before he explained something. She wondered whether they each had a station, Dolly, Marco, Rosa. Maybe they had different radios even. No, they would be cuddled up together in one frequency, the way they liked. Okay, so this is definitely a very in media res situation. Like we start with a reference to something in Madeline's life that we don't have really a lot of context for, as per starting in the middle of the story, but we do know that she is 21, she's drunk, perhaps, living it up because of that special birthday, and then it's a shocking beginning to this page. Something awful happened. She's in a car with children, not sure if they're her own or if they're someone else's, and there's a horrible accident, and it seems like they all die. Of course, this colors my assumptions about the next part, which, maybe I'd know differently, of course, if I read the story from the beginning, but I assume that Leonora is connected to these people. Like, the easy assumption to make is that the three children she references are the three who died in the car accident. And it's certainly easy to presume that too, because this is a short story, so there's not a lot of room for a lot of deviations and subplots. And that line about eating them is a little weird, I guess I don't think of Elizabeth McCracken as a surrealist short story writer, so I'm not sure where that came from. But the talking about them as if they were radio frequencies, presuming these are the same children who died in the last section, it's just a beautiful way, I think, to deal with grief, and a reminder of the strength of Elizabeth McCracken's writing. And I am a short story aficionado, and I've enjoyed other of McCracken's short stories. But I guess in this case, I don't know, maybe I'll put this down and justify it with just the confusion of these two sections mashed together to try to get a sense of the whole. Which, of course, it's just par for the course with the page 112 tag. But I do think I'll put this one down for now. And so that means I will go with one of my previously played with books, which also feels good to, give them a second chance and finally get them off the TBR. And out of the two of these, juxtaposing these two videos I made at two different times, I think we can easily say that this one came out on top for me, The Forever Summer. I think, again, dealing with grief and how it, percolates in people's lives, that's something that really stood out to me when I read this page back in the day. I tend to end, my previous clips on a more negative note because I'm trying to justify picking another book instead, but I really do feel like there is a lot of promise in here, and plus, it is seasonally appropriate, right? We're reaching the end of summer here, so maybe hold on to it for a little longer, just like Blythe seems to be holding on to Nick here, and I'll be curious to learn more about these characters this month. And that about covers it for me now. I will leave Goodreads links for all three of these books listed down below in case you would like some more information. And on that note, all I have left in this outro is to shout out another booktuber, because since I tend to think of the page 112 tag as one of my TBR games that I play, I like to feel like I'm part of the in crowd by, talking about somebody else who's doing something, TBR related, whether it's a TBR game or a readathon. this month I decided to choose a readathon, another seasonally appropriate readathon, in fact, started by Gwendolyn Kessinger, which is happening later this month. It's called the Back to School Readathon, which from my understanding, or at least my cultural context, school years usually start at the end of August or the beginning of September. And so she and her fellow hosts are calling themselves teachers. I think they're doing a couple of reading sprints in the last week of August, and they have prompts that have to, correlate to school subjects and picking books that way. They also have a Spirit Week, which is a custom I know from my school days as well, where you dress up in funny costumes for sort of basically for fun and to enjoy a spirited time together with your classmates. Like you dress in your PJs or you dress like your teachers, etc. And for this readathon, it's a photo opportunity to take photos of yourself and share them dressed up, or take photos with books that fit the theme. And there should be, I think, a pretty active community for this one. So anyway, if you'd like more information, I will link the announcement video down below. In the meantime, I've been doing a lot of adding books to my month's TBR, and now it's time for me to make good, so expect to see me again on this channel next for my latest AM reading video, so stay tuned. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.